welcome to another episode of Cultural Markisms. My name is Mark Powell, and my special guest with me this evening, Sydney time, is Dr. Anthony Dillon. Welcome.
Thank you. I don't know about special, but...
Oh, no, it's great to have you with us. I didn't realise that we just lived basically down the road from one another.
Yeah.
You're currently a lecturer at the Australian Catholic University.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony, I know there's a lot of people out there that would be familiar with you already, but just give us a very quick summary of who you are professionally and why you've been involved in the public sphere.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm an academic, as you said. It's kind of like it's my day job.
Yeah. It pays the bills.
Yeah, it pays the bills. I don't know if it has any relationship to the other part, which is I just call myself an Indigenous Affairs commentator.
Right.
I don't claim to have the answers or to be the authority, just a commentator. And it was, must be 22 years ago. So I'll just give a brief bio.
Yeah, sure.
When I was in the public service in Queensland, I worked for Queensland Health. I just did mainstream data, and because Aboriginal issues was a hot topic then, you saw it wherever you were. And while I was working there, I kept noticing this pattern that they kept saying, giving the view that, with Indigenous affairs, it's got to be Indigenous people who look after it. And that sounds so nice, Indigenous people taking care of Indigenous health and that sort of thing. And I was seeing that more and more, and it just didn't sit right with me. I thought, why do they need to be so separate? And why can you only be an expert if you're Indigenous?
Yeah.
And this was at about the time when the internet was coming in. And so I was able to start doing some research, and then I come across a fellow in Queensland, Gary Johns, a former minister, and he had a group where he was talking about similar things, and I thought, this is good, because I was by myself. Then I found out that there were a few other people, and we were just sort of questioning. I mean, we had this motivation of how can we improve the well-being of Aboriginal people. But this group I was with was seeing that this whole idea of keeping them separate, only allowing Aboriginal people to talk about it, having gatekeepers shout racism all the time. We could see that this was wrong, and it was not helping anyone.
Yeah, I've heard some terrible things said about you. You're a coconut. And, you're all these things, black on the outside, white on the end.
That's all par for the course.
Yeah, why do the left hate you so much?
It's because they don't have any answers to the questions I pose. And it was Orwell who said, genuine progress requires the demolition of myths. And I've said about, just through questioning, wanting the truth, I think demolishing a few myths. Yeah. So they hate you for that.
Yeah.
So back then, it's when the internet was coming into its own. Then you were able to start to do research, find out what was happening there.
Yeah.
I was able to find out that in America they had a parallel situation, not so much with the Indians, but with the Black Americans.
Yeah.
Similar sorts of things.
Now, you've got a fascinating story, because you've done very well academically. You're now a lecturer at the Australian Catholic University. You've also lectured at Sydney University. Your dad was a police officer. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, okay.
He's quite famous.
Yeah, he's my father. So.
Anthony Dillon's dad. I actually heard you were Cole Dillon's son.
So I went to school at a time when having a policeman for a dad was cool. I think everyone just thought that was good. There was no problem with that.
Yeah.
And people have said, did you ever get picked on at school? No, not at all. that was seen as a good thing.
Yeah.
And I was just raised in a normal home, Christian values like you.
Yeah.
And I was never raised as a policeman's son. I was just raised as a, normal person, I guess.
Yeah, member of the community.
Member of the community. I guess the one difference I did have was Dad and Mum were very strict on us going out and what we did, because Dad had seen the worst things.
Yeah.
Dad had been in that situation where he's had to go tell parents. Yeah. Your son or daughter, has met with tragedy. So there was that strict upbringing for which I'm grateful.
Yeah.
And there was good discipline.
So where'd you grow up?
In Brisbane.
Okay.
So Brisbane's my home.
Yeah.
My heart's in Brisbane. My body's down here.
You're Queenslander.
Queenslander.
Yeah. My dad's from Queensland. We're not going to talk state of origin on this, right?
And so people say, did you ever think of being a policeman? No, maybe because I didn't see any novelty in it. Just growing up seeing it, there was no novelty in it. So, no, it never entered my mind.
But your dad is quite a respected figure, not just for his honesty as a policeman, but in the Fitzgerald inquiry.
Yeah.
But also he's quite high ranking.
Yeah. Australia's first and highest ranking Aboriginal police officer. So he attained the rank of inspector in Queensland.
Yeah.
So, he had achieved a lot and, done a lot. So he's seen it all.
Yeah.
And it was just in the latter part of his career that he worked on cultural issues and that sort of thing.
Now, there's so many things I want to talk to you tonight. We were talking the other day that you, I think, actually came out and visited a town I used to live in, a little town in northwest New South Wales called Weewar.
Yep.
And you were talking there about the principal of the school, Mr. Peter Corrett, who I know personally, actually was a member of my church in Weewar for a time. And you were talking about the success there that they had in actually helping Aboriginal children. And one of the keys to that success, well, you tell us.
Well, just on the first day I visited that school, the principal, good bloke, was showing me around, and we come across a groundsman who also taught scripture there. And Peter said, Anthony's here to find out why we're doing so well with Indigenous students, because they were among the top 10 schools that had a Indigenous population of 50% or more that were doing really well.
Yeah.
So that's why I was there. And this groundsman / scripture teacher said, I'll tell you why we do so well. We treat all our students the same.
Yeah, that goes completely against the narrative, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Now, certainly they cater to individual differences, but they don't pigeonhole you. Okay, you're Indigenous, so we better do this approach. It's the individual needs. And the teachers just see them as they're our kids. Yeah. They're not our Aboriginal kids, and they're our non-Aboriginal. They're just our kids.
Yeah, sure.
And, under Peter's leadership, the school provided for them very well, catering to all their needs. And as you know, these days, different to when you and I went to school, schools are having to do a lot more than just teach. They're having to be mum and dad. They're having to be social worker. They're having to be the counsellor. They're having to be the nurse.
Yeah.
So that school, like many others, caters to all those needs. But again, they see the kid not as an Aboriginal kid, but as a kid in our school, in our community. So
now this is really important. I want to pick up on this because, so you're saying the success in Weewar, 40% of the town, according to the latest census, is Indigenous in Weewar. My children went to the Christian school in Weewar, where 50% of the students are Indigenous. There's only 3 schools in town: the Catholic school, the Christian school, and the public school. A lot of the people in the universities would say, oh, no, you've got to treat Indigenous kids different. You've got to teach them about their culture and their ways. It's not working. Weewar's following a different pattern. Just explain a little bit more. Why is that approach working?
Okay, well, it's not just academics. It's everyone saying it.
Yeah.
Anyone who's got their finger in the pie, I guess, in the pot. I think it's working because fundamentally the commonalities between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people far outweigh the differences. Yeah, and you can't escape that. Yeah. I mean, Aboriginal people are people first, Aboriginal second. And so, yes, there may be some difference. Often there's no difference, but there may be some difference for some of them. Yeah. But underneath that, the commonalities.
So is the problem here, Anthony, we're majoring on the minor?
I think so. And because some people can derive a nice income from that. Yeah. And build a nice little empire.
Okay, so I'm going to change course a little bit.
Yes,
something
please.
A little bit less controversial, although this was hugely controversial in the media. Bill Leake's famous cartoon, which we'll have put up on the screen in just a moment for you to see. This is the famous scene. Talk us through this.
Can I say another thing about police?
Yeah.
Because in recent times with the Black Lives Matter, I've been speaking out in favour of police.
Yeah.
And there are going to be some people out there who say, oh, yeah, well, you would do that because your father was a policeman. No, it's just I see another injustice and I'm speaking out against it. The police have been misrepresented,
Mm.
and it has nothing to do with my father being a policeman. So we might talk about that later.
Well, I saw actually just on social media, I think it was on Facebook, you put up a post saying that if you are still supporting Black Lives Matter, I think that's what you were saying, then please unfriend me now.
Yeah.
Why do you feel, I mean, you're an Indigenous person. We would think of all the people that could feel aggrieved and, fulfill a victimhood narrative, you'd be it.
First of all, that's the first time I've ever done anything like that.
Right.
Remove yourself from my page if you support any particular group.
So you really feel strongly about
Yes.
this?
And look, it's good to see there's been some pushback. A lot of people are aware and have woken up to the fact that Black Lives Matters are not really genuinely concerned about Black lives.
Right.
They're just concerned about having a platform, looking and feeling important. If they cared about Black lives, they would care about all Black lives. At the moment, they just seem to care about those Black lives where there's a white perpetrator. Black on black killing means nothing. So that's why I oppose them.
Yeah, right.
And if it was, all Black Lives Matter, I'd be marching with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So for you, it's really a question about true equality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their motivation.
Yeah, right.
So, here in Australia, we have it all the time. We hear about these. Well, actually, we don't always hear about it because it just doesn't make the news. If there's a black on black killing and it's vicious and nasty, often it just doesn't make the news. Dave Price, Jacinta Price's father, said to me, he said, unless you're family, you probably wouldn't hear about it.
Yeah, right.
Because it just doesn't make the news.
Yeah.
How shocking is that?
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, white person kills a black person, big news story.
Yeah.
Black kills a black, no, not news.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And statistically, how common is that?
Yeah, Indigenous people are more than at least three times, to be the perpetrators of homicide and to be the victims of homicide.
Wow. Now, a lot of people would respond immediately to that going, well, the problem is systemic racism.
Yeah.
How would you respond?
It's a nice cliche. It's a very simplistic answer, but I don't see the evidence for it. And, if someone wants to present me with some evidence, and by evidence, I don't mean just quoting someone else who said the same thing, but some real evidence, I'll look at it, I'll consider it, but I haven't seen any so far.
Okay. Well, let's go back to this video. Let's go back to this cartoon. This is the cartoon by Bill Leak.
Okay.
Tell us a bit about the history about this, because you and your father are actually involved.
Well, I'll tell you how we're involved. First of all, I have a network of about 20 people, 25 people that I send emails out to just from time to time on Indigenous issues.
Yeah.
And that cartoon was, I'm up late at night. I saw it published. I thought, this is a good cartoon just to send to my group. And that's all I thought. This is just a good cartoon.
Yeah.
It was just like all of Bill's cartoons. They were relevant to the time. He was there was this story about Dondale detention and the overrepresentation of Indigenous kids in detention. And that cartoon just reflected it, that, where you've got kids who get into trouble, you got to also look at the parents. And I'm not necessarily saying condemn parents. I'm just saying we have to look at that part of the equation.
Yeah.
Support them. Yes, do everything, but let's not turn a blind eye.
Yeah.
So I just sent that out to my network. And I also sent it to my father.
And how did they react?
And to them, it was just normal because they'd been reading the news. And my father, I forget the exact words, but it was something like, and I said, look, Dad, look at this great cartoon Bill's done. He always manages to capture these things in a humorous way without losing the seriousness.
Yeah.
And Dad said, absolutely agree. He does it so well, and it's such a great cartoon. That was that. It was just another day. And then Bill phoned me up about 10 o'clock or something. And Bill said, Anthony, you wouldn't believe the criticism I'm getting. And I thought, looking at the cartoon, but he'd been copying it thick. And he let me know. I said, oh, mate, I'm sorry to hear that. I showed it to my father. He thought it was good, and my network thought it was good. So then I phoned up my father and I said, Dad, Bill's copped. And Dad had met Bill a couple of months earlier. Yeah. And they'd got on really well. And I was looking so pleased to these two men meeting each other. Yeah. And so Dad phoned up Bill and Bill went from here. I didn't listen to the conversation, but Bill phoned me afterwards. Bill went from low to up here. When someone like Cole Dillon,
I know,
says that's a good cartoon.
I mean, that's just fascinating, because from there on, you know, we can just see the next cartoon.
Yeah. And
you know, Bill himself not only got hung, drawn, and quartered by the media. Here's the next one, right?
And
but then he got brought before the Human Rights Commission. And he was described as this like racist, and yet here he is, basically best mates with you and your dad.
He's the most unracist person you could meet.
Yeah.
He's married to a beautiful Thai lady.
Yeah.
Good mates with me and my father, and there's just nothing there to suggest racism.
Yeah.
And he did another great cartoon years before this one. There was an Aboriginal man who was killed in Doomadgee Island at the hands of there was police involvement there.
Yep.
And Bill did a great cartoon of that, capturing the fact that a white police officer had been heavy-handed with an Aboriginal man.
Yeah.
So how could you say he's racist when he was defending the Aboriginal man who was, died, and he was having a go at the police?
Yeah.
That was that. It was just Bill was elated once my father had had a chat with him, and the rest is just as there was still a lot of dirt thrown at him.
Yeah.
But Bill withstood it. He had friends and family who stood by him and knew him so well.
I want to press a little bit deeper, because move away just from the controversy of right versus left, and what can we actually do, do you think, in terms of providing solution for Indigenous people?
Yeah, okay. There's certainly a cycle, and I guess you can enter it at a couple of places. But I think what is most important is youth have got to see adults in their community working as normal. Right? So if you have parents unemployed, they're often going to be engaging things that are not the best things to be doing.
Yeah.
Throw in a bit of alcohol.
Yeah.
And you're going to have problems. And if kids see that, not only are they at risk of harm themselves, but they're seeing, this is what you do when you grow up. This is my future. So I think if we can get kids to see adults working as normal, they then want to go to school. They then know that school leads to something. And if the adults are working too, they then take school seriously.
So, I mean, is family breakdown, would you say, is that a key factor here? Family
breakdown and lack of employment opportunities. And you're going to have that in remote places. And I'm not for 1 minute saying that living in a city is the best thing ever, but often in these places where, in these remote areas where you have a lot of Indigenous people, there's not as many employment opportunities. Having said that, someone like Warren Mundine would tell you that in a lot of these places there are, if you get in there and do something.
Yeah.
And I would like to see Warren as the, if ever they had a minister of Indigenous employment, he should be the person to do it, because he's got the know-how on how to get things working as far as employment and enterprise goes. But often there's just not the opportunities there, or if there are opportunities there, the people may not be job ready because they haven't had that experience of the responsibility of having a job where you've got to turn up on time, where you've got certain commitments and obligations. And then in some places you have situations where humbugging is a big problem. So why would you get a job if you're going to have family members coming around to take your pay? And even Bess Price was telling me when she was minister up there in Northern Territory, she'd have family turn up at her office wanting their share.
Yeah.
So that can be a deterrent to working. But opportunities are a big one. So
now, you mentioned something to me the other day that you thought part of the solution here is welfare and moving people to centres where there is more work. You want to expand a little bit about that?
That's certainly a controversial one, and I'm not saying it's the first choice, but I'm saying I think there are some times where the situation is so dire, where there's little chance of an economy where we have to relocate the people in a sensitive, strategic way. And I always look at it this way. If you were to go back 150 years and get an Aboriginal person and say, look in this crystal ball, this is what your grandchildren are going to be doing in 150 years' time, right here, they'd be disappointed. Okay. So on those occasions where, like I said, there's little chance, I think we need a sensible exit strategy.
Yeah.
So we can, put the people in a nice place, not force them, but give them the opportunity to do that. And someone who did a wonderful presentation on this, Stan Grant, spoke about it. And I've got it's a YouTube clip where I think David Spears was interviewing him. And Stan said, as a young boy, his father had to move the family around to go get work where they could get work. And it has served Stan well. Here he is, a top journalist who's travelled the world because his father set the good example that if leaving here to get work is what I have to do for my family, well, then that's what I will do. And Stan says his connection to where he come from is still as strong today, even though they had to move around. So it's not as if Stan lost his culture or his identity or anything. Yeah. What happened was Stan got to see a good role model.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's great. What do you think is happening in the education system at the moment, in particular with Aboriginal people? What do you think are some of the opportunities and some of the challenges?
Yeah, again, challenges remoteness. So in these remote areas, it can be hard to get good staff to stay at these schools for a long time. People say, well, how about training up locals? And that's fine. I'm all for that. But we're kind of a long way from that happening. And, there's a few obstacles in the way there. But to get good quality staff, and I really do mean good quality, not those teachers who want to go out to these places because they think it'll be easy and they'll get credit for later on because they've served in a remote community, to get quality staff and to have them stay there for a minimum of 5 years. And I think you need a minimum of 5 years because if you've got that high turnover of teachers and principals, the community aren't going to connect with the school. So that's a big challenge in education there.
Yeah.
That's the biggest one I can think of. But we want all Indigenous kids, just like all non-Indigenous kids, receiving a world-class education. I think the other big challenge or, solution to the problems is we've got to get these kids, Indigenous kids, into education early, into kindergarten early, so they see that as normal. And I can remember Pat Dodson saying, with the kids, ideally, we should start at the perinatal stage. So looking after mum, making sure mum's safe and eating well, and that she's going to be reading books to the kid and that sort of thing. And then get them off to learning centres or whatever you want to call them, where they can get with other kids and get exposed to the good things early on.
Change track a little bit again. Just recently you wrote a letter to the editor of The Australian.
Oh, today?
Yes. Do you want to talk us through about that?
It's...
So if just the people that are watching, I'm paying Anthony tonight in my daughter's caramel slice, which I recommend is probably one of the best in Australia. What do you reckon, Anthony?
The best.
Yeah, so thank you.
The best I've ever had. Okay, my letter was about, and this is pretty much the same message I started off with years ago when I met Gary Johns. And I made the point, well, the article was, so the letter was in regard to an article that was published yesterday in The Australian.
Yeah, okay.
And we hear that the rhetoric again, self-determination, which in my opinion, my experience in Aboriginal affairs, is just a euphemism for separatism.
Right.
Now, if my house, if the plumbing needs fixing, I want a competent plumber.
Yeah.
I don't care what ethnicity he or she is. It just so happened when I lived in Brisbane, my plumber was an Aboriginal.
Yeah, right.
Policeman, plumber, Aboriginal plumber. and I employed him because he did a damn good job.
Mm.
I didn't care. I didn't have any cultural needs that he
Mm.
attended to. He was good at what he was doing, Tommy.
Yeah, right.
And so whether it be, house maintenance, car maintenance, body maintenance, you want someone who's competent. And there seems to be this assumption that only Aboriginal people can understand the needs of Aboriginal people because they're so different to non-Aboriginal people. That's nonsense.
Yeah. Mate, you like caramel slice just as much as anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, it's not something I need.
But it's something that you culturally appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think, look, one of my favourite philosophers, Anthony Dillon, and if you haven't heard of him, you'd like his stuff, Indian fellow, said, scrape off the thin exterior of culture. He said it is a thin exterior. He said we're all the same. The wants are the same, the needs are the same, the problems are the same. We're all the same when you just scrape off that bit of culture. So when I hear that term self-determination, which sounds so lovely to some, so romanticised, I personally don't see a benefit of, if you've got a community where you've got Indigenous people and people say, oh, and now we have this Indigenous centre there and it's staffed by Indigenous people. Well, I think, why not just have it staffed by competent people, whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous? Certainly to me, it'd be a good thing if it's staffed by locals. So I'd be more concerned about having locals employed rather than recruiting people from outside. But I don't see the Aboriginal part of it as being that crucial.
Yeah, an interesting part for me, and I find we often don't talk about this in the media because it's, I don't know, there's an anti-religious philosophy going around in a lot of journalists. But what integral to, I'm a Presbyterian minister, I have background in anthropology. I see the key role that religion plays in culture. What effects do you see in religion, as in Indigenous traditional religion, Dreamtime spirituality, and other religions such as Christianity? What impact do you see that as having in Aboriginal culture today or Aboriginal societies?
Well, I think it can have a positive impact if they come back to the principle of connectedness or interconnectedness between one another. Now, I think with the Indigenous people, and I think when we try and understand their culture, their belief systems, their religion or whatever, it's like language. It gets modified over the years.
Yeah.
And often when we hear these, unless you're hearing it from a native speaker, like sometimes you'll hear someone doing a welcome into country and they'll do a bit in what they think is language, and often it's not.
Right.
It's been
They're fudging, are they?
It's been reconstructed, modified. And I think the religion and culture has been modified. So now we have Aboriginal people talking about our connection to country, our connection with the land. What about our connection with each other?
Yeah, right.
Why not focus on the connectedness between people,
That's interesting,
both Indigenous and non-Indigenous?
So do you see as latent within traditional Aboriginal spirituality too much of an emphasis on land rather than community
in the modern
expression?
Yes, yes, I do. And I have read before that, and I think it's similar with many Indigenous peoples. In fact, all people, if you go back far enough, there was this recognition of interconnectedness, oneness.
Although I'm just thinking historically, I mean, now we're really getting into areas that are very controversial, because we talk about today as, First Nations people. But, is it really accurate to call the traditional Aboriginal peoples that were in Australia a nation? Or were they really disparate tribes of people?
Well, they were, but I don't get too hung up about that. If someone wants to use the term collectively First Nations, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, right.
It's what they then do with it, and is more of a problem.
Can you explain?
Well, if they try and pass it off as we're all the same, we're all homogenous, we all think the same,
as in Indigenous Aboriginal people.
Yes. Therefore, that's why the voice would be such a good idea, because the voice can represent all us. Well, no, you're just as separate as what white fellas are. They have all their
interesting
separations. Separate.
Would it be fair then to characterise historically the Aboriginal peoples as a little bit like Europe, with their own customs and laws and
languages? Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And battles.
Yeah.
Let's not go there tonight. But.
No, but that's just fascinating to sort of take that into consideration. So tell us, what are you writing on? What are you exploring at the moment in your own studies?
With work, a bit on schooling.
Yep.
What are the best ways to get the best educational outcomes for Indigenous people?
Yeah, great.
That takes up a large slice of what I do.
And I mean, if there's one thing, if you had the power to enact one change or even a couple of changes when it came to policy with Aboriginal people, what would you do?
I would try, well, there's so many things, but I would try and embed in people this belief that I've been saying, that the commonalities far outweigh the differences. That should be the starting position. It should be the default position.
Yeah.
And, if you find evidence that there's a big difference somewhere, then I want to hear about it, but that shouldn't be the default position that's unquestioned.
Yeah.
Now, look, probably just going beyond that, I would like to see, if I could wave a wand, it would probably be such that leaders or anyone who's engaged in the debate was not afraid to express their opinion. I saw and I should have given this to you. There's this black preacher in America. I got this YouTube clip just the other day, and he was just saying these things. He said, white people have become too frightened to answer back to black people, to disagree with them.
Wow.
They're afraid of, being called racist and that sort of thing. So I'd like to see, for all non-Indigenous people and leaders in particular, say what you want to say, be held accountable. If you make a mistake, you should be held accountable, but don't be afraid of, I better not say this because it may upset this Indigenous person.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I know that's one of the things we're trying to really do on The Good Source is to provide respectful debate where we can, really hear where the other side is coming from and interact with that and push back on that, but in a way that treats people with proper respect and just doesn't demonize the other. So, I think that's a great point. Yeah, great. Well, Dr. Anthony Dillon, thank you so much for joining us on The Good Source. It's been great to have you with us and great to hear about what you're doing. If you want to see more and read more about what Anthony does, you can go to his Twitter profile, which will come up on the screen in just a moment. Anthony's very active on social media, Facebook, Twitter.
My webpage, which is, they'll hopefully put it up, www.anthonydillon.com.au.
Yeah, great. Look out for his articles in The Spectator, Quadrant, and from time to time, The Australian. Mate, it's been great to have you with us. Look forward to you coming again and getting some more caramel slices.
I hope I can come back again for this and for this.
Yeah, fantastic. Great to have you with us. And, hopefully next time on The Good Source, we're going to be talking to Bindi Kolchoka. A fascinating story, another Indigenous woman. But we look forward to seeing you next time on The Good Source. I'm Mark Powell, and bye for now.
Cultural Markisms is a production of The Good Source, hosted by Mark Powell. To watch, listen to, or read more content without the SJW PC fact filter, visit goodsource.news. That's good, SAUCE.news. Become a Good Source supporter for exclusive access to live and unedited interview recordings, including the conversations before and after the show.